Hi friends, today we are making the caramel coffee crochet baby blanket. For this tutorial, I just am using 3 shades of a weight 3 cotton yarn. These are actually yarns from Joann's, RIP. So I'm not even going to say what the names are or anything, but you'll need a weight 3 cotton yarn and a G 4mm crochet hook. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start with our lightest color. If you have 2 lighter colors, the pattern calls for kind of like a sandy color as well. I just don't have any more of that left in my stash, so I'm just going to use white for all of my my rows that aren't fancy rows. I guess that's how I'll say it for now. The pattern calls for chaining 120 to start. For this tutorial, you can chain any even number. So I am going to chain 16. 1, 2, oops, 3, slowly but surely, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14. All right, 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, just double counting. Now for row 1, you're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each stitch across. So go ahead. I like to go on the back bump. It makes it easier for when you are doing your border rounds. This blanket does have a border. So what you'll do is you'll turn the chain towards you and you're looking for this second back bump from the hook. So there's number 1, number 2. And just do a regular old single crochet. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Pardon me while I pull some more yarn from the ball. Okay, and yeah, just go ahead and single crochet across. When working into the back bumps especially, but in general with the starting chain, I tend to use fingernails a lot to get the hook into that stitch. Always goes more smoothly after that first row is done. If you prefer, you can foundation single crochet your first row, but then you'll want an odd number. So you can foundation single crochet any odd number or chain any even number and then single crochet across. Either way, you'll end up with an odd number of stitches, rows 1 and throughout the rest of the pattern. Okay, just a couple more stitches here. All right, there's row 1. Chain 1 and turn. Rows 2, 3, and 4, you are single crocheting across. So I am going to go ahead and complete those 4 rows, and I will meet you at the start of row 5. All right, so here are our first 4 rows of single crochet, and at this point we're going to join our caramel color and complete our first row of caramel stitches. So the way I like to join, you'll complete all the stitches, you know, that final single crochet in row 4, loop the yarn over your hook, leaving a long enough tail to weave in later, and just pull through. Pull tightly on the yarn that you just left behind, that white, and then chain 1 and turn. Although I am going to go ahead and cut that yarn. Oh, golly. Get that out of the way. All right. Snug everything up and we'll turn. All right, so the caramel stitch rows are one of our fancy rows. In this pattern, we have caramel stitch rows and puff stitch rows. Both stitches are constructed the same way. It's just where you insert your hook is what gives you a different look. So the first stitch, we're just going to complete a single crochet, and then we'll do our first caramel stitch. So to do the caramel stitch, first yarn over and insert your hook in the next stitch and pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. It's like you're starting a half double crochet or a double crochet. We're going to yarn over again. Insert your hook beneath the stitch where you just inserted your hook. So we're going to yarn over. We're going to insert just beneath that stitch right here. Pull up a loop. And pull to the height of the current row so the fabric doesn't pucker. You'll have 5 loops on your hook. Yarn over one more time. Now we're inserting beneath where we just inserted. So you just keep going down one step. So that'll be right here. Insert your hook. Pull up a loop. Again, pulling to the height of the working row. You have 7 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 7 loops. Might take a couple passes. That is your caramel stitch. All right, and then you might have to shift some of those loops over just a smidge to get into the next stitch, which will just be a regular single crochet. Now let's do a caramel stitch again. So yarn over, insert your hook in the stitch, the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook beneath that stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook beneath the stitch we just worked into, pull up a loop. Should have 7 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 7 loops. And if it takes some multiple tries, that is just fine. Single crochet in the next stitch. And you just do that across. Single crochet caramel, single crochet caramel. All right, so here's that last stitch of the row. And simply single crochet. All right. Now we're going to join our white again. If you have another lighter color, if you're following the blanket pattern, you got a lighter color, another lighter color. This is where you would join color C, which in my pattern was like the sandy color. Chain 1 and turn. And now we're going to do 4 more rows of single crochet. And it's the top of the stitches look just like they do, the top of the caramel stitches look just like they would in any like ordinary stitch. So you just work into each of the stitches across as you normally would. I am going to do those 4 more rows of single crochet and I will meet you back. All right, so here are our 4 rows of single crochet. One tip, if you're not totally sure, if counting the rows is a little tricky and you're not totally sure if you've completed 3 or 4 or 5 rows in single crochet, your ends will both be on the same side if it's an even number of rows. So, you complete row 1, row 2, that's where the end would be. Row 3, row 4. So, I hope that's a helpful hint if counting the rows of stitches it can be tricky sometimes. So, let's go ahead now and join our brown color. This is to make the puff stitch rows, which in my mind looked a bit like coffee beans, which is why I called it caramel coffee baby blanket. So again, just loop that yarn, pull it through, chain 1, we can snug that both up a bit and turn. Now, just like our caramel stitches, we're going to do a bunch of yarn overs and get 7 loops on the hook and pull through all 7, but we're working all into the same stitch the whole time. So you'll single crochet in the first stitch, then in the next stitch we'll work a puff. So yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook in the same stitch, and pull up a loop. Now we have 5 loops on the hook, yarn over, insert your hook once more in that same stitch, pull up a loop. You'll have 7 loops on the hook, yarn over, and pull through all 7. There's your first puff stitch. Single crochet in the next stitch, and when you do that, we can see a bit more easily, because we've kind of framed out our puff stitch, the texture of the puff stitch is pushed to the back of the work. That's the right side. This is a wrong side facing row. So this is correct that the stitch is pushing to the back because we'll have that great texture on the right side of the fabric. So let's do another puff stitch. Yarn over, insert your hook and pull up a loop. Yarn over again, insert your hook in the same stitch and pull up a loop. Yarn over a third time, insert your hook and pull up another loop. 7 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 7. And again, when we single crochet in the next stitch, we will see that texture pushed to the back of the work, which is the right side because this is a wrong side facing row. So go ahead and work your puff stitches. It's single crochet puff across, ending the row on a single crochet. So it's just like the caramel stitch rows where every other stitch is a single crochet and the other ones are puff stitches. Now, you maybe have worked up other patterns in the history of your crochet journey where the puff stitch is worked differently. Maybe you get 9 loops on the hook. Maybe you get 7 loops on the hook, but you yarn over and pull through the first 6 and then yarn over and pull through that last stitch, or the last 2 stitches on your hook. There are lots of different ways to do puff stitches. I chose to do them this way for this pattern so that it would be easier to memorize because you're getting that same number of loops on your hook and yarning over and pulling through all 7, regardless of if you're doing a puff stitch or a caramel stitch. All right. We'll do that. Rejoin our white. All right, and turn. So now you can see it's a little tricky because this is such a dark yarn. If I bring it closer to the camera here though, you can see all of that great texture on the front. And then the caramel stitches, something interesting about them, something that's nice about them, I think, is they look pretty similar on the right side and the wrong side. So this is the right side with the caramel stitches, and this is the wrong side. So they just look a little fluffier or puffier or something on the wrong side of the work. They look neater on the right side. But either way, I think they look nice. And even your puff stitch rows, they don't look like puff stitches on the wrong side, but they look nice. So it's nice that in this baby blanket pattern, even though there is a clear right side and wrong side, the pattern looks nice either way, if you're looking at the back or the front. All right, so this is your repeat. It is technically a 10-row repeat because you have 4 rows, excuse me, of single crochet, then your caramel row, 4 rows of single crochet, then your puff stitch row. So it's a 10-row repeat, but 8 of the rows are just single crochet across, and then your textural rows once again are completed. Those stitches are completed in the same way. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up a loop until you get 7 loops on the hook, and then yarn over, pull through all 7. So the 2 rows that are more decorative are still pretty easy to memorize because they're constructed in the same way. The hook is just inserted in a different spot. All right, I'm going to do 4 more rows of single crochet just to get a nice sized little swatch here, and then we're going to talk about the border. All right, so I have completed my 4 rows of single crochet. That is where I'm going to stop this swatch. So I'm just going to chain 1 and pull all the way through to fasten that off. At this point you can weave in your ends, or you can wait until after you do the border. I am going to wait until after. So let's get started. This is a moss stitch border we're going to be doing, and if you've never done moss stitch or linen stitch before, it is a gorgeous stitch. I don't know anybody who doesn't like it. I think it is so pretty, and it creates this like gorgeous woven appearance. And so what we're going to do is, having your work right side facing, pull up, insert your hook in that top right stitch, pull up a loop in your border color. I am using the brown for the border. Chain 1, and that attaches the yarn more securely. Single crochet in that stitch. We're going to single crochet in each stitch across. I did a little quick math for this border swatch, and since we have 15 stitches across the top, and the work is a little bit shorter than it is wide, it's not a perfect square. I measured everything and cross multiplied, and we're aiming for 13 stitches along the sides. I did that math for you with the baby blanket pattern too. If you adjust the size of your blanket, you might have to, well, you could either do your own math to figure out what amount of stitches to aim for along the sides, or you can simply follow the advice I have within round 1, which is to aim to work 4 single crochets for every 5 row ends. So to remember this, you can just go into your, skip your fancy rows basically. So aim for 4 stitches, skip your fancy row, 4 single crochets, skip this fancy row, and so on. We've reached the corner here, so you single crochet across, chain 2. I always like to use stitch markers in my corners, takes any guesswork out, even though chain 2s are kind of easy to see. I don't want to worry about making a mistake, so I'll place a marker there, single crochet again into that same corner, and that's our first single crochet along the side here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then skip your fancy row. And again, do another, again, about 4 rows for every 5 row ends. Now, if you do that math, you would end up with an even number along the sides, but we can't have an even number. It needs to be an odd number. For the moss stitch border, each side, each of the 4 sides of the round needs to have an odd number, not including your chain 2 corners spaces. So somewhere along the way, simply increase, add an extra stitch somewhere. So let me just double count real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and my 13th stitch will be right into this first, what I think is the first stitch of the bottom. Now, a fun fact, I'm actually going to double count this just in case. Sometimes your knot can get pulled kind of tightly and hide the very first stitch of the bottom. So let me just double count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, that did not happen here. If you counted and you got an even number and you're like, wait a second, try just wiggling this knot, like loosening it a bit, just tug on it a bit, and sometimes you will have an extra V that appears, that's hidden there. This has happened to me multiple times. Apparently not this time, but that's just something to keep in mind, a little hack, if you will. And that only matters if you need a specific repeat for your border, in this case an odd number of stitches along each side. So here I'm working my 13th stitch of this edge into that first stitch of the bottom, chain 2. Again, I'm going to use a stitch marker here. If you're more comfortable without them, or you're totally comfortable without them, you're like, I can see those chain 2 corners, feel free. This is just, it's a personal preference of mine. And then go ahead and single crochet across the bottom. The nice thing about working into those back bumps like we did for row 1 of the pattern is now these stitches along the bottom look like the top of stitches. Otherwise, if you work into a different part of the loop, a different part of the chain, it looks kind of just like a twisty, curly stitch. I'm not really sure how to describe it otherwise, but it doesn't look like the top of a typical crochet stitch with your little V's. And so I've just found it so much easier to work into the back bump to make it very easy to identify those stitches. It is a little tighter than working into the top of an ordinary, like a single crochet stitch, but at least it's really easy to see where to place your hook. All right. So this should be stitch number 15, chain 2, place your marker, and single crochet again into that same stitch, and that's stitch number 1. Again, aiming for 13 along the side here. So I'm going to go ahead and do those 13 stitches. I'll meet you at the starting corner. All right, we're back at the starting corner. I've got 13 stitches along the sides and 15 across the tops. In the starting corner, instead of a chain 2, we're going to do a chain 1. I'm going to place that stitch marker. The chain 1 is harder to see than the chain 2s. and slip stitch join to the top of the first stitch of the round. Why a chain 1 in the starting corner? I will show you in the next round. With the caveat that if you're like, this is annoying to memorize, I like memorizable patterns. If you're here, perhaps you also like memorizable patterns. And so if you're like, wait, it's easy to memorize chain 2 in each corner, but the chain 1 in the starting corner is throwing me off, you can do a chain 2 in the starting corner. It looks a little neater to do a chain 1 in the starting corner, and I will show you why. So for the beginning of round 2, chain 1, we're not turning because we're working in continuous rounds. The whole border is worked right side facing. Now we are going to single crochet back into the starting corner, which is a little funky working backwards like that, but it keeps our seam in the corner, which I think looks very polished. You always know where you left off. It's very easy to know where you started when the seam is always in that corner. So go ahead and pulling your loop back to the marked corner, insert your hook, pull up a loop, and complete your single crochet. Now for round 2, we did our first single crochet, chain 1, skip 1 stitch, which is this very first stitch of the round, of the previous round. We're skipping this stitch. I'm being confusing. We're skipping this stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip that stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, across, and it should land us neatly in the corner. Slowly but surely. Okay. All right, so chain 1. The chain 1 lands right above this last single crochet of the round before the corner. And so we're going to skip that stitch and in the corner work single crochet, chain 2. I'm going to move the marker up to the chain 2 I just made, single crochet. All right, we're going to chain 1 and skip that stitch and single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, skip a stitch and single crochet in the next stitch. Sorry if you can hear the stitch markers just scraping against the bottom of this white paper here. If you can't hear that, great, and if you can, maybe it's a little ASMR. I'm going to continue. I just want to show the corner, working into the corner one more time. So okay, here's our last single crochet of the round, chain 1. We're skipping this last single crochet and then working into the corner. So single crochet, chain, oops, split the stitch there. Chain 2, move up the marker, single crochet again into that corner, chain 1, skip that first stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, and onward. So it has to be an odd number in order for the single crochet chain 1 for that count to line up correctly, otherwise it wouldn't. All right, so I am going to continue around and I'll meet you at the start. Okay, so I've just done this final single crochet and chain 1 leading up to this corner. So we're going to single crochet into that marked corner. Again, just chain one this time. Move up the marker and slip stitch join to the top of the first stitch, which is a little finicky, but we can get it. Oh boy, these stitches are splitting like crazy. I can't even tell. All right, I think I got it. Slip stitch join, chain one, don't turn. And now round 3 is our repeat round. So we chained 1. We're going to once again insert our hook back into this marked stitch so that we keep our seam in the corner. So working backwards, work your single crochet, chain 1. Now work your single crochets into each chain 1 space. So skip the single crochet into the chain 1 space, chain 1, single crochet into the chain 1 space, chain 1, single crochet into the chain 1 space, and so on and so forth until you reach the end of the row. And again, once again, you should do a chain 1 right above that last single crochet of the I guess it's the first row of the round, until you get to your corner. So there's a chain 1 above that single crochet. In the corner, work single crochet, chain 2, move your marker up, single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet into the next chain 1 space. So you're always chaining 1 above single crochet stitches and single crocheting into chain 1 spaces. All right, I am going to go ahead and meet you at the start, and then I'll be able to show a little more clearly why we're doing, it'll be more visible after a few rounds, why that chain 1 in the starting corner looks a bit better. I'll see you at the start. All right, so here we are back at the start. I did my last chain 1. I'm going to do my single crochet into the marked corner where we started the round, chain 1, move up the marker, and then slip stitch join. If I just lay it down, well, actually, let me bring it closer. I'll extend that loop a bit. When you look at each corner, like here's a corner with the normal chain 2s, and it looks good. It looks like it matches. You come around the corner nicely. They look good. Up here, you can see, it's so subtle, but you can see like slightly bigger holes, and the starting corner gets a bit more stretched out because of the way we work backwards into it. It makes the stitch a little bulkier. It's a little hard to see, but like these stitches working backwards into the corner are just a smidge bulkier than what our other corners look like. You know, no bulk, it's an ordinary stitch. Because of that added bulk, if we did chain 2s in the corners, we'd have bigger eyelets that formed. And it would just make that starting corner look different enough from the rest that I think the chain one in the starting corner looks better. It's just my preference. Again, you're welcome to do the chain two. You're like, I don't care, especially if you're making a baby blanket or you size up, you do the math and you're like, you know, I'm gonna make a lapgan or even like a twin size blanket. No one's gonna look that closely at your starting corner if it's a much larger project. But for something small, like this little, I don't know, maybe I might just turn this into a scrubby. It's like a nice little, I don't know, it's like 4.5 inches by 4 inches by now. Or I'll make a really big border and turn it into a dishcloth. I don't know. Maybe I'll just use it for like removing makeup. Anyway, for a smaller swatch, the eyelets in that corner are just that much more obvious. I'm not much of a perfectionist, but this is one of my perfectionist tendencies, is I want my crochet to look really good, especially my borders. And so that's why I do the border math, and that's why I'm encouraging you to do a chain one in that starting corner. So, you know, I'm going to go ahead and fasten it off. So you can do an invisible join. There are great tutorials on YouTube for that. Bella Coco has a really good one that I could link in the description. But here I'm just going to do a chain one, tighten that up, and later I'll weave in all these ends. But for now, let's go ahead and tuck those back and just take a look at our cute little scrubby. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it's helpful when it comes to working up this pattern if you're making the baby blanket. If you are interested in more memorizable crochet baby blanket patterns, feel free to like this video so others can see it. Subscribe to my channel if you would like notifications of more video tutorials. All right, friends, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.